Hi, David. Hi, everyone else.
Hey.
Bobby, how you doing? Thanks for
Good.
joining us. Always great to catch up with you.
We missed you on Monday.
I know. The thing is, if we could get that calendar update to include the password in there, that would be super helpful. Because it seems like I try to click on my calendar invite and the existing one doesn't have that password, and then I'm trying to scramble to see if I can find the.
You know what? I'll get that attended to. I don't realize people come in that way because it's updated on the homepage wiki, and it's also on the calendar, I think, correct? It's just the invite that's wrong. So I will
Yeah.
look into that.
Okay, that'd be awesome because then it's just one click, and I have kind of
And
a
you're in.
consolidated calendar, Bobby. So that's why it's the deal.
Okay.
Okay, great. So we'll just give them a couple more minutes to get on here, and then I'll kick it off. I'm just pulling up my documentation here.
Yeah, my son is impressed that I have anything to do with YouTube as well, although he's not impressed. When we tell him, oh, we get hundreds of views, he's like, what? My Minecraft live stream that I went to had millions of views.
Yeah. Peter, thanks for joining as well.
So, John, let me transfer host over to you now that the live stream is up.
Okay, great. So
and I will keep an eye on the live stream page. Just as a note, we do sometimes get questions there as well as questions on the Zoom chat. So if anybody wants to toggle back and forth, that link is in the chat. So
yeah, and I'll keep the chat open, but I kind of want to turn it over to Melanie and Jonathan and let them run with it. But I'll kind of do the kickoff here. So everyone, thanks for joining the meetup today. And we try to have these virtual meetups out of the Denver meetup group about once a month. And we try to also pick a time that really works for everyone around the world, especially the European community that comes in. So today I have the pleasure of having Melanie Cutlin and Jonathan Hamilton present. And Melanie's done a wonderful job of presentations around the world and is really an expert here. And let's talk a little bit about what Accenture's doing with Hyperledger and the blockchain framework. So they have the blockchain automation framework, which is going to be talked about today, as well as a blockchain integration framework. And so they've been a good contributor to the Hyperledger community and also are working on the Cactus project. So Melanie is the managing director and global lead for Accenture's blockchain and multi-party systems practice. And she leads a tech innovation leadership team. She has worked in supply chain, finance, operations, just a whole bunch of projects for large Fortune 500 companies throughout her 20-year career. And she's also on the board of the Colorado Technology Association, which is wonderful, and has been quoted in a number of respected publications, including the Silicon Republic, CoinDesk, and Ledger Insights. She's spoke at all kinds of events, including the Hyperledger Global Forum. And then she's also has a number of publications to her name as well. So Building Trust in a Digital World and Unlocking the Trapped Value Within Blockchain. These are all great publications. And then we also have Jonathan Hamilton, who's a senior tech architect for Accenture's Products and Platforms Group. And he is very much involved with both front-end and middleware projects for their financial services clients. And he's also focused on building software products and platforms to support clients across industries as well. So at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Melanie. And then after we wrap up Melanie and Jonathan's presentation, we'll do a quick Q&A, but then let's go ahead and there's a link in the chat, which is for AirMeet. And we're going to be testing AirMeet today just to provide that extra layer of personal networking that I think virtual meetups are missing. So Melanie, go ahead and take it from here, and we're looking forward to your great presentation.
Fantastic. And John, I am honored by all those words. So, and I'm thankful to have a fantastic marketing team behind me to put all that together. It's great to be here. So I am been in Colorado for 12 years. So actually being and able to speak in the Colorado community is fantastic. I just recently moved up into the foothills. So I'm dreading the start of winter and the feet of snow that I now have to experience, but I do enjoy being here in Colorado. So as John said, I co-lead our blockchain and multi-party systems practice together with David Treat, who's on the board of Hyperledger. So we are involved kind of in every facet of Hyperledger, and it's really a fantastic opportunity. Accenture, if you know a little bit about us, we work across the Fortune 100, Fortune 500, really kind of global 2000 companies, and are looking at enterprise scale solutions across just about every industry. For context, our priorities have been, since we started this as a strategic growth, investment area at the firm in 2016 or so, it has been about what is the future of money, what is the future of identity, and the futures of supply chains. And that could not be any more relevant now than ever before. And so as much of our business is seen kind of the changes this year is in scope and priorities, we have doubled down on those priorities, including some exciting things like the future of money and working together with central banks around a central bank digital currency, and how that can really transform getting financial aid to the people who need it the most. And the financial inclusion aspect of it has been fantastic. The future of identity is really less about identity, but more about a consent-based architecture built together on programs like Indy and Aries that are allowing you to share data and information with different parties without sharing all data and all information with those parties, and really kind of understanding who has your information, where you can bring it to, and how that unlocks entirely new use cases in the blockchain space in a distributed capability, right? So things we're doing, for example, known traveler digital identity is something where we're getting to borderless travel. And so the idea that a TSA agent is surprised when you show up at the airport with your passport to pass through customs when you booked your flight 4 months ago, that idea is a bit archaic, right? Like, how do we get to that sharing information? They can do what they need to across the borders, and then even sharing it with third parties, like Marriott's involved in this program, and how they can understand who you are, that you're arriving, and do that data verification around your identity. So lots of fantastic programs that are continuing to move forward. In that space as well is our return to work initiatives, the idea of a vaccine passport. So getting people back into offices, getting people back onto planes, getting people back into travel has been a huge effort on how do we think about it, not just as a one company at a time, but how do you think across multiple parties and across an entire ecosystem. Our practice at Accenture consists of not just engineering and capability skills, but really that strategy, right? Engaging in the whole industry as we look at it. So it's been a fantastic space to think about how would we like it to work? How would we like kind of getting back to work to be in that space? And the third area of priority around supply chains has been picked up more steam than ever. Supply chains have been, to be honest, kind of I'm going to solve for my supply chain. I'm going to use one of a handful of products that have been out there for a really long time, and I'm going to solve for me. In the midst of COVID, what we've seen is solving for an end-to-end value chain, which is actually lots of supply chains put together, is more important now than ever. And the ability to get to supply chain resiliency and responsible supply chain is a place where it was, I think, a priority on a handful of companies' budgets and agendas, but is doubling down in this space as there's just a need to work together. So going from supply chains to supply networks, it's an obvious fit for a DLT-based architecture. Things we're doing, if you look at, and there was a recent announcement around Nippon Express, who's the major logistics provider in Asia, that's working with their pharmaceutical companies to track and trace goods as they move through a supply chain to drive massive efficiencies. And they've made a big commitment to transforming that entire space. And we've got a number of partnerships together in that space, and it's a Hyperledger driven initiative as well. So we're seeing people move out of prototype pilot into real results, into real production solutions faster than ever before. That big transformation, bringing people along with them. And it's funny, I don't know if you guys noticed this in people you talk to, we have grown such a big group of clients that the converting the skeptic from the blockchain skeptic has kind of gone away, and most of our clients are now well on their path. So when I do come across a blockchain skeptic now, as our audiences are increasing, it's almost, we have to remember our language, right? What helps them understand and work in this kind of corporate enterprise construct versus what they've maybe read in the media about the public permissioned solutions. So it's been a fantastic partnership with Hyperledger. We're continuing to kind of see the growth and interest in this space, which is a big reason. And I'm happy to talk about any of these priorities or initiatives in our Q&A or in the sessions there afterwards, because there's many we could talk about. But what I thought was most interesting for the Denver group today was end-to-end, really global group, as I see in your chat window, which is fantastic, is some of the capabilities and engaging the members into how do we continue to grow what is our blockchain automation framework and our Hyperledger Cactus kind of interoperability capability. And Jonathan is fantastic in this space. So before I may tell a few more stories, but to introduce who you're going to hear from next is Jonathan leads as part of our Accenture products and platforms. So these are products that we bring commercially to clients. Accenture is typically a services organization, and a lot of it is consulting capabilities, but we do find that there are products in the market that have a wide use, that have a true commercialized capability that can offer support to a lot of our clients. And what he's done along with the team has been fantastic, is starting to contribute and treat our open source contributions to Hyperledger as if it's one of those products, right? And so really giving that investment, that capability, that focus that the best talent can do. So the more we can engage with the members and what services these help apply in your own projects is fantastic, right? So how we can kind of engage the network, how we can help make sure that what we're doing is relevant to what you guys need in the marketplace, because this is driven a lot by our corporate enterprise clients, but seeing the additional projects and the growth across the board is just fantastic, right? Everywhere that I kind of see it. So I'm going to pause there before I hand it over to Jonathan. Is there one of those topics or questions, you guys can use chat or come off mute, that is most interesting you'd like to hear more about, or we can jump into hear more about the automation framework in Cactus?
Yeah, Melanie, this is John. I had a question about interoperability being the, really the #1 thing as we go into 2021, because, there's going to be multiple blockchains out there, and really being able to connect them is a key component that I see emerging in 2021.
It is a fantastic question. It's interesting because it was 2017, I was on a panel together with Cliff from the Australian Stock Exchange, and he had said, I'm going to build a solution that's so fantastic that everybody in the world wants to build a bridge to me. And I bet by the time I get there, there's going to be a lot of bridge building companies, and they're all going to have specific purposes and specific needs. And I think that is, there's a bit of a, how do you help your organization understand what is the main focus and value proposition and how you're going to market, right? So what is your use case doing? How does it bring enough value to your ecosystem? It should stand alone. But recognizing that we're all doing business with other parties and other places, and the need to have them talk to each other is absolutely true. In some of our early evaluation, I had coined the term with our team that there's going to be a crossword puzzle of blockchains. They're all going to cross at certain intersection points. And as long as you plan for that, and you know that 2 down is the same as 3 across, and you plan for that, there's a lot you can do architecturally to know that you're going to need to pull in data from other sources, push data to other systems, and to work successfully. But I love doing kind of the stakeholder analysis, persona analysis of who's in your marketplace, who's in your ecosystem that needs to be able to participate, and what's the value to each of those players. And I was actually just talking through with some colleagues lately that skill set is so unique to this space. It's, more than ever, it's not a winner takes all model. You have to be able to design a solution that encourages people to participate with you, because they're all going to see value out of the solution as well, right? We've seen a lot of, someday I'm going to get an AI agent to go scan like all the previous projects that worked or didn't work and tell me what were the trends of blockchain ecosystems and what worked. But the winner takes all model of you better, thou shalt, join my solution in order to do it. Everyone else powers up and creates their own, right? So that idea of understanding the value to each of the stakeholders in the party, and then how they can continue to do their business and their legacy systems today is most important, right? It's aside from, I think, financial infrastructure, everyone else is using blockchain as an add-on, not as a reinvent the core, right? It's truly reinventing the core in our financial infrastructures, right? The money exchanges and things like that, they are reinventing their core and making them available to other parties to do business better, and get rid of our old messaging-based kind of architecture. But the rest of them are this is an and to their legacy infrastructure. And so the more and more you can understand that and know that you have to share data with other parties is super helpful. And you're going to learn a little bit about it from Jonathan, about how it works and where these tools are out there and available. And I think contributing them to the open source space was so important and critical, because I'd get that question. I got pulled aside on some conferences like, great, so you guys like have some cool interoperability stuff. Like, I can't afford to hire Accenture, so how are we going to use it? What are we going to do? Like, how do you help it become available to all projects of all scopes and sizes and scale? Was a big input into why we wanted to go this direction. And Jonathan's nodding his head, so I'm good. I'm on message. But like, I think, having it accessible to more and more people, and just helping people understand that you got to solve for one set of use cases at a time, but architect for the future, right? And the more and more tools that build bridges are fantastic. Hopefully that addresses some of your question. And then, I think then, is there any other questions before I hand it over to Jonathan to give you more about the specific projects? I'd love to know.
Yeah, feel free to have, take yourself off mute if you want, or you can post them into chat. And I'm glad to ask Melanie or Jonathan any of those questions as well. So either way is good. Go ahead, Melanie, I'm turning it back to you.
Thank you, John. And John is such a great advocate for blockchain everywhere. So I love getting a chance to see him in many places, and now bump into each other kind of across the world, which is fun. If you guys could in the chat, just bring, introduce yourself with kind of what your role or interest is. Are you working on a specific project? Are you just getting into something? Are you kind of where you're an expert and you've been running programs for a long time, and long time in the blockchain space is always relative, but be curious to see who is here and with us as we kind of hone in the rest of this. But I'll use that time, Jonathan, as I introduced you, right, like as a part of our Accenture products and platform, an amazing capability to help drive this forward. So I'll hand it over to him.
Hey, thanks, Melanie. And thank you, John and David, for the opportunity to speak to this virtual community here today. And thank you all for taking the time out of a busy, hectic time to learn more here. So as Melanie mentioned, I work in Accenture's software division, and I've been supporting Cactus, which is formerly known as the Blockchain Integration Framework, and Blockchain Automation Framework, aka BAF, or BAF, for a little over a year. We can thank the trademark lawyers for those exciting names. I think we need like a Boom to be the next one to really have the comic book sequence going. So today I'm excited to introduce you to both Cactus and BAF and help you understand their value. And frankly, really the focus is to invite your collaboration to improve them further. As Melanie mentioned, these aren't Accenture's assets. They may have gotten a start in Accenture, and we have a focus of maintainers that are supporting it. but our ambition is to make them the community's assets and to have enough contributors, maintainers, involvement, users from the community that they have a long, beneficial life for the blockchain ecosystem. So yeah, please drop in questions in the chat, and we'll save time for Q&A at the end if things aren't answered as we go along. So getting into it, I just want to set here the placemat of the overall Hyperledger structure. And of course, the top level projects are all things that at scale and have not only been approved by the TSC, but have rigorous governance from the TSC. And of course, distributed ledgers being the first thing that most people think of, especially if they're new to Hyperledger. But the greenhouse itself here includes tools and libraries for reoccurring needs in the blockchain ecosystem. And of course, down here on the right, you see the labs highlighted in this ecosystem. So this is an incubation space, if you're not familiar with it, to enable low friction launch of software concepts. And they're not governed by the Hyperledger Technical Steering Committee, and therefore don't go through the same level of rigor and scrutiny and effort as a top level project. But they do provide a direct space to start open development and grow a community. And both the software assets that you'll see here today get their start at the labs just last October, actually. Eventually growing Cactus to a top level project, and BAF is getting a lot of momentum and success of its own. And from my humble perspective of limited open source and blockchain experience, I've really found the labs to be an invaluable vehicle to launch an open source project and grow a community. So I want to give a special shout out to the lab stewards, such as Rye Jones, for all their tireless efforts. Thank you for making these possible. And certainly for those of you out there that have ideas that you'd like to launch and get out there, look into the labs. Okay, so we're going to start off by taking a look at BAF, and there's a hyperlink here if you want to look directly at the lab on GitHub. I won't be offended if you're multitasking during the talk, as long as it's learning about BAF and Cactus in parallel. So what problems are we solving here? And really early on in our Accenture blockchain practice, we saw that clients were eager to validate the promise of this disruptive technology through hands-on work. As Melanie mentioned, converting some of the unbelievers. And so we were eager to support them in that journey. And with any technology, production usage is really the fuel to not only progress the technology itself, but also its ecosystem adoption. And in the case of blockchain, this progress can't come fast enough to fulfill its promise of a more secure and efficient future. However, what we and our clients experience with this rush to realize quick proof of concept wins led to material technical debt, real things that slowed down production, that goal to production. And when the hubris of the technical debt impedes that journey to production, when the POC has to be completely rewritten for a pilot or actual production usage, it becomes difficult, from a cost benefit standpoint to realize that business case that maybe the funding or the program had been launched under. So we saw this as a reoccurring issue that had to be addressed in order to help our clients reach production use cases and to advance the opportunity of blockchain technologies. This challenge led to Accenture investing in, and then as Melanie mentioned, eventually open sourcing BAF. And we like to call it a bridge to production you can trust. I don't know if the marketing team had their, well, they didn't have their go in it, but that's best we did as technologists. And it implements a DLT reference architecture, which is a framework for describing the end-to-end needs of production-grade DLT solution. It's designed for production-grade security, including best practices in key management. It's infrastructure independent to run an organization's preferred provider. It supports multi-company and multi-cloud deployments. And again, BAF is open source, no commercial license lock-in. You don't need Accenture to implement it. You can go implement it yourself. We provide all the documentation, the materials. And so, like I mentioned, while we have maintainers from Accenture supporting the roadmap, we're very actively seeking community collaboration to accelerate BAF and the value it can provide. And really, this session is an open invitation. If you see ways to improve this, if there's a platform or a feature that you would like to have, for your organization, please get involved. Want this to truly be an asset of the community, and your involvement can take many shapes, right? I mean, it can be contributing code, but it can also be filing issues or upvoting issues that you would like to see us prioritize on the roadmap. So as the clever name implies here, BAF provides an automation framework for rapidly and consistently deploying those production-ready platforms. And that acceleration of the initial implementation provides a cornerstone for a secure and scalable architecture for further production needs. And it's a very simplified view here, but really on the left, you see a configuration-driven approach. The solution is configuration-driven to set up a new production-grade network, within hours instead of weeks or longer, and also allows the network to scale over time. So we've been steadily working through more platform support. So we not only have Hyperledger technologies like Fabric, Basin, and Indy, but also Quorum and both Corda open source and Corda enterprise. On the right, you see a number of guiding principles that have been steering BAF and its roadmap. And I won't drain them all. You can see some of them are reoccurring themes, but on the infrastructure agnostic side, it can run on your choice of provider, whether it be a specific cloud or it be on premises. But I want to just emphasize that this portability comes from Kubernetes. So that means you need to have an existing Kubernetes cluster. BAF isn't built to do that provisioning of the infrastructure services for you. There's a lot of other solutions out there in the marketplace to spin up a Kubernetes cluster or even have someone else manage a Kubernetes cluster for you. We're not trying to solve for that space. I'll call out the modularity and security, allowing you to swap in additional technologies, where required, as well as providing strong protections for secrets. And of course, for this audience and otherwise, I'll just harp on the facts that it consists of and utilizes Apache 2.0, which is enterprise friendly, and technologies that are well known enough to have large populations of skilled developers. We wanted to make sure not to utilize things that would be obscure or have a hard time adopting. Okay, so just briefly here, a view of the DLTs that you can deploy with BAF. And of course, you can find these compatibility details on our Read the Docs. We update this with each release. And ultimately, our goal is to make sure the latest and greatest platforms are supported. We can't maintain everything indefinitely with our finite resources. That just takes resources to maintain older versions. So eventually, it's not possible to have long-term support of every DLT, especially as fast as the market's moving. But again, this is an open conversation with the community. If your organization really needs, I don't know, ND 1.9, it's deprecated here. We welcome you to join and maintain it so that it stays active. And these are simply the priorities we've set with our current resources, and the bigger the community, the more that we can accomplish together. Similarly, if you don't see a DLT or a feature that you need for your work, again, maybe I'm a broken record here, but speak up, get involved, and we'll work together to support it. Okay, so here you can see, again, a bit of a high-level view, the key components of BAF listed here. First, as mentioned, Kubernetes is the foundational runtime and is a prerequisite. The abstraction there, really the goal is to abstract away the underlying infrastructure, make it portable, but also get the high availability and scalability necessary for production workloads. And so that works any infrastructure, cloud on premises. If it has Kubernetes and software listed here, you'll be good. Ansible here, moving our way around, is an automated automation command line tool. Simplifies the system configuration, software deployment, other complex tasks in the orchestration. And with BAF, the Ansible playbooks contain a series of rules and tasks to orchestrate automation of the various components of a ledger. For example, it is used to issue certificates for each node in the network, and then we put the certificates into HashiCorp Vault, which we'll talk about shortly. Helm is a manager of composite application packages known as charts. And many people already know this, but those charts of instructions for deploying the necessary components, including the storage and resources. And with BAF, we use those charts for designing and configuring each DLT for its network setup. I'll also mention we moved to Helm 3 with version 0.7, and I think should further simplify execution and maintenance of our solution. Next we have a GitOps approach via Weaveworks Flux, and it applies continuous delivery to sync Git as the system of record against the target Kubernetes cluster. In our case, that involves directly passing Git commits from YAML configuration files into the target cluster. And then last but not least, HashiCorp Vault, come back to that one. It's a secure approach to store and gain the secret information, such as tokens, passwords, and certificates, obviously important in any system, but especially in a distributed ledger. And the vaults manage the certificates for each node and used during the life cycle of the deployment. So that's a quick flyby. Just pausing here and repeating the theme. We've got a lot of great progress, but if you look on the GitHub, you'll see on the Read the Docs roadmap, you'll see that there, despite the great progress, there's just a lot of interesting work left, and could really use your help and welcome your involvement, whether it be filing issues for features you'd like to see, interacting with one of our open planning meetings. All of our work is out in the open. We don't have Accenture specific planning, no secret backlogs. That's one of my themes. It's all out there in the open. So, and those are out in the Hyperledger calendar. So please join if you get a chance. Even just providing input to our roadmap, we'd find valuable. We didn't have time scheduled for a demo. And I won't put Shonak on the spot. One of my colleagues is on. That'd be a fun twist. But I'll send out some links here pretty shortly. There's actually on the Hyperledger YouTube channel, there's a pretty good demo of Fabric, and then we post all of our program increment demos with each release. We release a demo video out there. So there's a lot of content that shows how this is working with each of the ledgers and different functionalities. So there's that there for self-service, but you can also reach us on our Rocket Chat channel. So I think we're doing pretty good for time. I see different things going on in the YouTube chat. Do we have any questions from the group?
Yeah, I'll give you another question, then I'll jump over to see if there's anything in, and maybe David, you can ask the YouTube questions. So it'd be good to kind of run through a few of the use cases as well that you see really emerging out there. I know that one of the ones I see is, Ethereum to Quorum asset transfer, sharing health data with access control, things like that, Jonathan. So maybe you want to talk about a couple of those use cases.
Yeah, I mean, specific to BAF, it's a horizontal solution. So there's nothing in it that's specific to a use case. We do provide a couple reference apps that can be used to validate a deployment. If your question's more on Cactus interoperability use cases, I don't have as much visibility in the industry, Melanie. I don't know if any of those that John threw out there are something you could talk about. I know, of course, some of our most of our client work we can't speak about in open forum, but
and I apologize because I jumped and looked at the YouTube stream while you guys were just when I realized there was questions I hadn't seen yet. But you know, that the automation framework, what I love to see is it allows you to spin up. This is a DevOps tool, right? Like this is a DevOps tool that allows you to spin up an instance and then put your use case on top of it quickly. So you don't have to worry about repeating all the same architecture steps every single time. So this is a utility, not a use case, right? So put any use case on top of this and have fun with it, right? Like this is a set of, you know, utilities that, you know, if you think of programming in any other language, you've got libraries of things that do what you need to do. So you stand up and you focus on the requirements for the client. This is what abstracts away much of that DevOps capability, puts you in a strong foundation rather than skipping the step and just going straight to features and functions and requirements and then having to redo all the guts of it when you're ready to actually move it to production, right? So I think that's the core value proposition here, is if you're in a place where you're doing a lot of stand up, drive to see if there's an interest in value, and then stand down, like this is where we were able to then automate away a lot of the traditional stand up, and you end up with a solution with whatever your use case is and your user experience and your data storage and whatever your actual requirements are on top of something that's more solid. So it's a foundation block.
And David, are you able to look at those YouTube comments, or even Melanie? How about, do you see them on your screen? I'm locked into the Zoom here and I have the Air Meet on the other screen.
Yeah, it's no worries. I'm keeping an eye. I mean, it seems mostly like more of a discussion about how to contribute, which I think has been covered, but maybe, you know, we could speak to a little bit more. I don't know if sharing, for example, the BAF wiki page is a good place to go. You could show people where they could pick like a good first issue, perhaps. Maybe if we just share the screen on that, that could be helpful.
Good. And then we've got Cactus coming up next too, which I know you guys are going to be excited about because that hits your integration points. Cool. Oh, you're on mute, Jonathan.
Sorry, just get my link list here. So I don't know if this can be, maybe I can relay it to the YouTube chat here in parallel.
Yeah, I dropped that link to that wiki page.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so for those of you who are in the Zoom, you know, I'm pretty proud of how much effort we've put into all this content for engaging with the community, and I hope you're able to find some use from it. You know, so we have a landing page here within the Hyperledger Labs and or wiki rather, and about information about how to get involved. You know, our actual read the docs site, our Rocket Chat channel. You know, providing a flow for getting a first deployment out there, and then you know we've got good first issues surfaced here, and you know certainly welcome people to take a look, see if there's a good way to get involved. And we've got on the GitHub page, we've got a contributing file and a Hyperledger code of conduct, which we abide by. So there's a number of materials. Hopefully it's all you know, pretty direct in terms of helping you to get started if you'd like to contribute. But you know, we're definitely reachable on the Rocket Chat. I think we've got a pretty good response rate there. I'll just go ahead and you know, share here that in case people want to dig through.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right, are we switching to Cactus now?
I think so.
Awesome.
I can find the presentation. Okay, so yeah, same mileage applies here for Cactus. You know, if you'd like to, sorry, trigger finger. I popped into a link here. So if you'd like to take a look, learn more in parallel, just go ahead. It's all out there, visible. So like a real software company here, I'll lead with a safe harbor. Take a page from Salesforce or one of the giants. So Cactus is a top level project, but it is in incubation status. It's not yet ready for production usage, and we are, you know, rapidly moving towards that. We hope to reach GA in early 2021, but we have a fair amount of work to do. And many of the things listed here are goals and things that are in active development. So I guess it's a combination of forward-looking statements and in progress and completed things. But unlike a software product company here with the community, it's all out there in the open, and you can see for yourself what issues are out there and what the state of the code is. So what is Cactus? It's a pluggable and enterprise-grade framework to transact across multiple distributed ledgers without introducing yet another competing blockchain. And we are intentionally not introducing another ledger. I know everybody's disappointed trying to go for the ledger high score, but the goal is to provide a decentralized way to interact without introducing an intermediary. And we're seeking to accomplish this by building Cactus as a thin and flexible SDK. And if you're not sure about why we're doing this, maybe you've already seen the innovation in the blockchain space. Melanie mentioned, right, shows no sign of slowing down, and that's a beautiful thing because it allows for a diverse array of solutions to address the unique requirements and fulfill more and more use cases. From the mundane to the mission critical. And this innovation is, really diverging the priorities of different technologies. I mean, some networks may prioritize transaction speeds, and some may prioritize scalability, and some may prioritize privacy. And, that variety is necessary and impressive. It's not a bad thing in itself. It's actually a good thing. But, when it comes to large scale enterprise adoption today, that rapid pace of change can also create a high stakes risk in selecting a solution. Ultimately, the trade-off of architecture concerns should reflect what's best for a network's objective and value proposition, not some lowest common denominator. Hart Montgomery, who's worked with us on Cactus from Fujitsu and the TSC, his point was that there's not going to be one blockchain solution to rule them all. Which I think is really great. So as businesses replace traditional infrastructure with multi-party systems, they need to confidently move forward with the blockchain platform that best meets their needs today, with the assurance that they can integrate, communicate, operate, transact with any other tech down the road. And ultimately, fragmentation is an intimidating challenge. I mean, if you look at it from an artificially low level of 100 ledgers, for those 100 ledgers to transact, it would take nearly 5,000 integrations. Well, I guess that'd be a lot of work for SIs like Accenture, but ultimately not good for the ecosystem, an enormous challenge. And, we're not here to claim that Cactus is going to solve all this. Expect it's going to take many, many solutions, but this is what motivates us, and hopefully will motivate you to join our community and contribute to the fight against fragmentation. We got our start, as two separate code bases, and so contributed independently by Fujitsu and Accenture about the same time. And so our goal has been to, bring the best of these contributions into one solution. And we started collaborating by defining our converged architecture, and spent quite a bit of time on hashing out overarching design principles with input from the TSC, the community, Intel, people from Intel, Microsoft, Fujitsu. We had a great range of people that joined to contribute to the principles. And this is just a subset. You can find the full list on our white paper on GitHub, which is a pretty hefty read in its own. Won't cover the full thing here, but I think it really lays out very clearly what our vision is for the solution and helps to guide us. So just to highlight a couple here for this audience, pluggability is really a core tenet of the solution. Plug-in architecture not only limits friction to adding future use cases and protocols, but also enables the community to work in a more loosely coupled manner. To quote O'Reilly, it's the architecture of collaboration. And already we are developing plugins in areas, not just the DLTs, but identity and service discovery. And we seek to increase the variety of plugins by minimizing how opinionated we are, and even embrace interoperability at the component level of our solution rather than silo and lock in. Next, we want to avoid complicating security. Users of Cactus should by default get the level of security on their local ledger, if not higher. And they shouldn't have to take extra steps or jump through hurdles to maintain that level of security that's normalized on the DLT that they're already using. So we don't want to introduce barriers or impediments there to something that's so fundamental and important on blockchain. Third, we want Cactus to be toll-free, meaning users should not have to pay tokens or assets to exchange value across networks, nor should operators be required to take a cut of transactions. There might be certain use cases that warrant it, but we're not introducing that as a core capability of Cactus. Ultimately, the fourth and perhaps most important principle is that Cactus is a low impact deployment. Our goal here is that interoperability shouldn't redefine the ecosystem, but rather adapt to them. And that means that the existing rules of the network, whether it be governance, trust model, consensus mechanisms, should all be preserved in each ecosystem. And preserving and surfacing that trust and consensus is a critical part of the protocol handshake between DLTs exchanging value, and want to make sure that that's revealed up front in case there's incompatibilities that can happen in a transparent way, and parties could walk away from a transaction, quote unquote, without unintended loss of asset data. So again, welcome your read of the white paper if you want to see the full list, but this is just a flavor here. And next slide, a very simplified view of the high-level architecture. Of course, in the real world, would be more than 2 DLTs, and the topology deployment is flexible here. Depending on your scalability requirements, you may want to deploy some of the components independently rather than together, as they're shown here. But the routing interface at the top is necessary to communicate between the networks, the hosts, and the nodes. The business logic plugin on the left there represents the code necessary to deliver functionality, whether it be a web application or a smart contract on a blockchain. And then finally, the ledger plugins, which monitor transaction data on an associated ledger and provide the ledger-specific capabilities for the validators and verifiers. And as their name implies, the validator validates transactions on the ledger and makes the signatures for the requesting to the verifier. And then the verifier, as it names applies, verifies the signatures from the validator. So similarly, high-level view, dig in further. We have a lot more detailed diagrams on the white paper. I'm going to keep this photo around for as long as possible because it's so great. The goal of the plugin architecture is that we're prepared for the future. And as new blockchains are introduced or the ecosystem grows, we want Cactus to support that growth and evolution. And again, this is a plugin architecture, and that enables the community to work on the components that are meaningful to them without having to take on the cognitive load of the full solution. And if there's a DLT, if there's a logging solution or some other component that you're passionate about, security, identity, please bring that to our community and help us improve. So in closing, BAF simplifies and accelerates their DLT deployments. It's production ready with Hyperledger Fabric, ND Besu, as well as Corda, open source enterprise, and then Quorum. Cactus incubation status. We're really looking for plugin contributors to expand our functionality, and you can join us and help build the future of blockchain interoperability. As people were mentioning, it is a hot topic that I think will only get hotter. And across both of these, we're really welcoming you to get involved with the communities, advance the features that you care about. So yeah, thank you again. I guess Well, were there other questions about Cactus?
Yeah, we had a couple of questions in the chat here, Jonathan.
Okay.
So, and a few of them, I think I might need a little bit of a voiceover from the people asking the questions.
Yeah, so if you want to take yourself off mute and ask the question, are you looking at the one? I think Peter did a great job of addressing the one from Steve, but maybe either Peter or Steve, you want to talk a little bit about that?
You got that one. Okay, sorry, I didn't scroll up to see that one. Okay, and then is it Jacques had another question around eliminating the role of third-party interoperability networks. Do you want to see more about what you were looking for there?
Sorry, I was typing the answer to that.
Oh. Thank you, Peter.
But I mean, Jack, do you want to clarify further? Or do you have reactions to Peter's answer?
My guess was, or assumption, is mainly the question being geared toward Cosmos Polkadot.
Ah, yes, right. Yeah,
But if
back to that.
that's, yeah.
Sorry, cut you off.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that if that's not the right assumption, then please just let me know and we can update the answer according to that.
Yeah, I mean, kind of back to the earlier point, you know, don't see, just as there's not going to be one blockchain to rule them all, you know, there's not going to be one interoperability solution to rule them out. And there's lots of, there's been multiple types of interoperability, as well as, you know, it's just going to take a lot of solutions to this massive problem.
I liked the early video we did on interoperability, and Jonathan, I don't have the link. I was looking for it, but you know, just the idea of as you're locking a transaction on one side to interact with another transaction on the other side, and keeping data persistence across two solutions, right? Like at the core and heart of this solution, it's how do you pass a transaction from here, go out, run a transaction on this side, and come back with the answer, and kind of continue your set of workflows. Like that's the core of this one. It's not trying to solve all interoperability networks. It's about a set of logic and tools so that as you're, you know, you maintain your state in one network, it goes in, it then can communicate with the other side and maintain its state persistence throughout the process as it works a workflow, makes a decision, has an outcome, and kind of returns back. So as you think about designing where two solutions are going to need to speak to each other, that, you know, once you've done that capability once, that's a reusable asset, right? Like that is something you could do now to go from one network, maintain state persistence to the network, next network as you work through any workflow decisions throughout the process. And so that's kind of the core of it, and just gives you that capability so that you can reuse that in places where it makes sense to you. And depending on what your requirements are on each side, there's obviously gonna be more capabilities needed. But the way in which the teams have designed this and then has grown right within the project here has been fantastic, and we found to be highly relevant in a lot of spaces where you've got say global trade happening here, but you've got a logistics track and trace happening here. How do you connect them together, right? Like how do you make sure that you keep that persistence, you don't lose, you don't end up between two networks with an old-fashioned network, you know, messaging based architecture between the two where you sent it off and now you've lost visibility as to what's happening as it's cycling through and kind of coming back. So different members are moving into different ecosystems at a different pace, right? So banks are moving very quickly into this space. They're very interested in getting access to transactions that they can offer financing and financial products around, versus other, you know, industries are solving for different problems. And so it allows them to both innovate at their own pace, but communicate together effectively where they touch each other. Does that help from a context perspective? Cool.
Yep, I think that's good. Duncan, you want to ask your question? You have a great question about BAF compared with Canton from Digital Asset.
Sure, I'm happy to. Let me put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. Great set of presentations, by the way. Interesting to go with both in one session. So yeah, on the Cactus side, we like obviously Accenture are working closely with digital asset and of course the DAML smart contracts language, and there's work that they're doing perhaps at a higher level with Canton in order to create interop, but at the smart contract level. How do you see that and the work that you're doing within Cactus as it now is? Complementary, just orthogonal? What's your thoughts, either one of you?
It is a fantastic question. And I don't know if Shonak has more to add in on this, as I know we've got a few team members on the phone. And I spent a lot of time with digital assets and their capabilities and where they fit in. Don't know that I have a talk track for specifically how this one hits to that one. Digital assets, DAML model is really around taking your business logic, extrapolating it away from the ledger level, right? So I wouldn't even compare the two in that perspective as, how are you running your business logic on Fabric or on, Corda or on different solutions? And they've got a set of tools that enable that to happen quickly from that perspective. This is really about deploying the ledger in scale and pace quickly with a kind of DevOps focus around it. So similar capabilities, but a different level of your infrastructure stack, right?
Okay. But in the context of interop, I guess this is really the question, more around Cactus versus. So, in other words, being able to run a smart contract that bridges multiple ledgers.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I gotta confess, I'm not familiar with it. I don't know, Peter, if you've come across it. I'll take it as an action to read up.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not trying to. It's not a. It's. I think it's interesting. Both are interesting. Let's put it that way. So
yeah, and one is, the ledger is about your persistence layer versus about your logic layer, right? So it's the idea that you're, they both solve a problem, but just a different layer within that stack, right? So
that's fair. Yeah, DAML, and we know this because we support DAML on a couple of Hyperledger projects, namely Basil and Sawtooth, as well as a couple of others. It treats the ledger as you say, as really a persistence layer. So it's not exploiting a specific, let's say, feature. If it was Sawtooth, it might be TPs, transaction processes, whatever. I mean, I'm not biased one way or the other, but it's essentially saying we use it as a persistence mechanism. We want the consensus. We want the features that the DLT provides us, but as a store.
Yeah.
Where
now let's
in fact you're not meant to even look at
more conversation about it. And a big part of this is getting to know who's who in the Denver network that we can build our network with as well, right? Which is why we're happy to always join. So happy to chat about it more in detail offline and kind of talk through that with an expert.
I'm not quite in Denver. I'm in Edinburgh, but hey,
well,
it's
still
small world. That's one of the weird side effects. I did a Hyperledger meetup in Toronto, and there were people from Nigeria. So.
Fantastic. Well, still in the community, happy to help.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and Duncan, that's great to see you're joining this event is really why we picked the time that we did to make sure that, it appeals to a broader community than just people that are in the United States or in the mountain time zone.
Yep. It's one world, but yeah, I really appreciate both presentations. So thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Okay, well, we're approaching the top of the hour here. I think Jacques has maybe one more question about the toll-free design. Jacques, you want to answer that or ask that question? I guess Jacques may not be joining us here, but I think some of this we can talk about in the breakout room. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do, if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and just ask Jonathan or Melanie directly.
I'm sorry, I have a hard stop actually.
But we will have, I think, Peter, if you can stay on, and now Shonak is on as well, who's an incredible expert in this. Both of them have been helping support both of these technologies. So happy to help them join as well.
Okay. And that's wonderful. And everyone knows this is just a beta test of additional networking. So let's just go ahead and cut over to the AirMeet link that I sent to everyone in the chat. And then those of you who can join us, that'd be great. And we're looking forward to it. And for the Accenture team, if you could spread out between a couple of the tables and kind of maybe move around as well. Everyone, I want this to kind of feel as close to in-person networking as we can make it, even though, of course, we're always doing everything virtually now. So let's go ahead and jump in there now, and I'm going to go ahead and start the AirMeet.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, and I'll stop this Zoom.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. If you aren't able to join the AirMeet, and thank you, Jonathan and Peter and Shonak, for the questions and answers as you've been supporting. And John, it's always fantastic to help do any of these events. So happy to be a part of the community.
Thanks, Sean. And
Yeah,
John, maybe
thank you
we
very
drop the link one more time in chat. I know you dropped it at the top, but maybe.
I did drop it one more time, but I'm going to
Oh, you did?
do it
Okay, I see
one more
other people.
time here. Yet
Yeah.
again. Here we go.
Thanks. Great. See everybody over there.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone.